Wife cheated and abandoned her husband and son. Now she's back with a bastard child. I wonder where she is from? The Auda City? Well, honey, you know I don't like to gossip. Lord knows I try to mind my own business. But sometimes these stories just fall right into your lap, especially when you're watering your petunias at just the right time of day. It all started with the Thompson family down on Maple Street. Such a lovely couple they seemed to be. Marcus Thompson, 37, worked at that big accounting firm downtown, and his wife Rebecca, 36, used to work there too before she had their first little girl. I remember when they moved in about 12 years ago, all bright-eyed and in love. Makes you wonder how things can go so wrong, doesn't it? Now, I'm not one to pry, but my kitchen window happens to face their backyard, and you can't help but notice things. They had 2 daughters, Emma, who'd be about 9 now, and little Sophie, 7. Sweet girls, though Emma always seemed a bit skittish around her mother. I noticed that early on when I'd see them in the yard. The way that child would freeze up when Rebecca called her name, well, it made my grandmother's intuition tingle, if you know what I mean. I first realized something was amiss after Sophie was born. Rebecca had been such a vibrant woman, always waving hello, bringing cookies to the block parties, that sort of thing. But after that second baby, Lord have mercy, it was like watching a flower wilt in fast forward. She'd sit on their back porch for hours, just staring at nothing while that baby cried inside. More than once, I saw Marcus rushing home from work in the middle of the day, looking frazzled as all get out. My friend Gladys, who lives 2 houses down from them, told me she'd seen a cleaning lady going in and out of the Thompson house. In this economy? Gladys had whispered over our Tuesday coffee. Marcus must be doing better at work than we thought. But I had my suspicions it was more than that. The real drama started about 18 months after Sophie was born. I was trimming my roses, you know how I like to keep them just so, when I heard the most awful crash from the Thompson house. Glass breaking, shouting, and then silence. 20 minutes later, I saw an ambulance pull up. No sirens, mind you, but there was Marcus being loaded in the back, his white shirt all torn up and bloody. Rebecca stood in the doorway crying her eyes out, and I'll never forget what I heard her say to the paramedic. It was an accident. I didn't mean to push him that hard. Well, butter my biscuit, I nearly dropped my pruning shears. The next day, I casually walked by their house with some extra banana bread I'd accidentally made too much of. Marcus's parents, Harold and Judith Thompson, were there with the girls. Judith answered the door, and let me tell you, that woman looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Just keeping the girls well, things. Settle down, she'd said, taking my bread with shaking hands. I could see little Emma peeking around the corner, and that child looked relieved as I'd ever seen her. It broke my heart. Rebecca moved out after that. Went to stay with her parents, the Mitchells, over in Riverside. Now, I don't know the Mitchells personally, but my hairdresser's cousin lives on their street, and she says they're the type who think their daughter walks on water. Never could admit when she did wrong, even as a child. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. For about a year, things seemed to stabilize. Harold and Judith Thompson practically moved in with Marcus to help with the girls. I'd see them in the yard, and slowly but surely, those children started to bloom. Emma began to laugh again. Real laughs, not those nervous little giggles she used to do. Sophie was toddling around, happy as a clam with her grandparents doting on her. Marcus looked tired, bless his heart, but he was trying. I'd see him leaving for work each morning in his pressed suits, coming home with his tie loosened and shoulders sagging, but always with a smile for his girls when they ran to greet him. That's a good father right there. But here's where it gets juicy, honey. My friend Dolores, who volunteers at the church with Judith Thompson, let slip that Rebecca was supposedly getting therapy and attending marriage counseling with Marcus. Working on their problems, Dolores said with that knowing look. Though if you ask me, any woman who shoves her husband through a glass table has more than just problems. Well, wouldn't you know it, but around the 6-month mark, I started noticing Rebecca's car parked down the street during what should have been counseling time. At first, I thought maybe she was visiting someone else in the neighborhood. But then Agnes Fletcher, who lives behind the Thompsons, mentioned she'd seen Rebecca in the backyard of her parents' house with some young man who certainly wasn't Marcus. Agnes has those thick bifocals, so I didn't put much stock in it at first. But then I saw it myself one afternoon when I was driving back from the grocery store. I had to take the long way because of construction, and there was Rebecca in her parents' backyard, wrapped around some tall drink of water like ivy on a tree. In broad daylight. The shamelessness of it all. I found out later from my nephew Kevin, who went to high school with them, that the man was Derek Chin, Rebecca's high school sweetheart. Apparently, they'd reconnected on that Facebook thing when she moved back home. He always carried a torch for her, Kevin told me. Even after she married Marcus, Derek would make these sad posts about the one that got away. The divorce was messy, honey. MESSY. My daughter's friend works at the courthouse, and she said she'd never seen anything like it. Rebecca tried to get alimony, can you imagine? After cheating and abandoning her family. But Marcus's lawyer was sharp as a tack. They had evidence of the affair, documentation of her refusal to work or care for the children, and of course, the police report from when she assaulted Marcus. But here's the part that really gets my goat. Rebecca signed away her parental rights. Just signed them away like she was returning a dress to the department store. Judith Thompson was in tears at church that Sunday. How can a mother just give up her babies? She kept asking. We all wondered the same thing. The gossip mill said Derek had given her an ultimatum, him or the kids. And she chose him. Lord have mercy on her soul. She chose a man over her own flesh and blood. They got married quick as you please after the divorce was final, and I heard from Gladys's daughter, who works at the same salon as Rebecca's cousin, that they were expecting a baby of their own. Now, here's where I need to tell you something that'll make your blood run cold. Remember how I said Harold and Judith were taking care of the girls while Marcus worked? Well, it turns out they'd been doing more than just babysitting. About 3 years into all this mess, my grandson was playing with Emma at the park, and he came home with the strangest story. Emma says she has a secret friend who visits at Grandma's house, he told me. She says she's not supposed to tell her daddy. Well, my spidey senses started tingling something fierce. I did a little investigating, and by investigating, I mean I happened to be walking by Harold and Judith's house during times when Marcus dropped the girls off. And wouldn't you know it? Like clockwork, about 30 minutes after Marcus left, a familiar Honda Civic would pull up 2 blocks away, and Rebecca would sneak through the back alley to her former in-laws' house. The betrayal. Those grandparents had been letting that woman see those children behind Marcus's back for years. Years. And bribing those poor babies to keep quiet about it. Emma later told my grandson they got extra toys and ice cream if they called Mommy Grandma's friend and never told Daddy. I was fit to be tied, but what could I do? It wasn't my place to interfere. Though Lord knows I was tempted to leave an anonymous note in Marcus's mailbox. But you know what they say about karma. The whole house of cards came tumbling down about 5 years after the divorce. I was watering my petunias. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because I'd just gotten back from my hair appointment when I saw Rebecca standing on Marcus's doorstep. She had a little boy with her, couldn't have been more than 4 years old, and she was sobbing like the world was ending. I couldn't hear everything from my yard, but I heard enough. Please, Marcus, she was wailing. Derek left us. He got a job in Singapore and doesn't want the responsibility anymore. I need my family back. Well, Marcus slammed that door so hard, I thought it might come off its hinges. Good for him, I thought. But then she just stood there, crying and carrying on, that poor little boy looking confused and scared. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That's when I learned the whole truth. Ethel Morgan, who plays bridge with Judith Thompson, told me everything the next week. Apparently, Harold and Judith had been facilitating secret meetings between Rebecca and the girls for the entire 5 years. They felt sorry for her, said she was sick after Sophie was born and deserved a second chance. They'd been filling Rebecca in on every milestone, every school play, every birthday. And those sweet girls had been manipulated into keeping this massive secret from their father. When Marcus found out, and boy, did he find out in spectacular fashion when Harold accidentally sent him an email meant for Rebecca about arranging the next visit. The explosion could probably be heard from space. He cut his parents off completely, filed restraining orders against all of them, and put his house up for sale within a month. But here's where the story takes a dark turn, honey. The stress of everything, the betrayal, the legal battles, trying to protect his daughters while working full-time, it all caught up with poor Marcus. He had a heart attack at work. 37 years old, and his heart just gave out from the stress. They rushed him to the hospital, but I was the one who saw the ambulance at his office building. I'd been downtown for my dentist appointment, and there were all these police cars and paramedics. I didn't know it was Marcus until later that evening when Judith Thompson showed up at my door, hysterical. "It's our fault," she kept saying. "We killed our son. We killed him with our lies." Marcus survived, thank the good Lord, but barely. He was in the hospital for weeks, and during that time, the girls had to stay with his brother Thomas, who lived 3 states away. The poor things were traumatized. Their daddy near death, their grandparents banned from seeing them, their mother essentially a stranger who'd chosen another family over them. But Rebecca? Oh, she saw an opportunity. With Marcus in the hospital and the restraining order not yet finalized, she tried to petition for emergency custody of the girls. Can you believe the audacity? The woman who signed away her rights suddenly wanted them back when it was convenient. The court hearing was a disaster for her. Thomas had flown back with the girls and testified about how they were terrified of being taken from their father. Emma, brave little thing, actually asked to speak to the judge. At 12 years old, she stood up and said, "She left us. She chose Derek and their new baby. Why does she want us now that he doesn't want her?" Out of the mouths of babes, honey. But the real karma came swift and brutal. While all this was happening, Derek had already moved to Singapore with his new girlfriend, some young thing he'd met at his gym. He'd been cheating on Rebecca for months, apparently. And their son? Derek signed away his rights faster than you could say deadbeat dad, leaving Rebecca truly alone for the first time in her life. Her parents, the high and mighty Mitchells, were so mortified by the public scandal that they sold their house and moved to Florida without a forwarding address. Even they couldn't stand by their daughter after everything came to light. The last time I saw Rebecca was about 6 months ago. Marcus had recovered and moved with the girls to a new neighborhood across town. Fresh start and all that. Harold and Judith Thompson still live here, but they're shadows of their former selves. The guilt of betraying their son and nearly losing him broke them. They spend their days hoping for a letter, a call, anything from Marcus and the girls, but nothing ever comes. Rebecca, though? I saw her at the grocery store, looking like she'd aged 20 years in 2. Her designer clothes replaced with faded jeans, her perfect hair now showing gray roots. She was with her son, sweet-looking boy, despite everything, trying to pay for groceries with food stamps. The cashier had to put back half her items because the card was declined. As I passed her in the parking lot, she recognized me. "Mrs. Mel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How are Marcus and the girls?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "They're thriving without you, dear." Absolutely thriving. The look on her face, it was like watching someone realize they'd thrown away a winning lottery ticket. She started to cry, right there in the parking lot, her little boy tugging at her sleeve, asking why mommy was sad. I heard from Dolores last week that Rebecca's working 2 jobs now, cleaning offices at night and stocking shelves at the wholesale club during the day. She lives in a 1-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, sharing a bed with her son because she can't afford anything bigger. Derek sends no child support from Singapore, and she can't afford a lawyer to pursue it. Meanwhile, Marcus's brother Thomas told Gladys's son, they work together, that Marcus got promoted to partner at his firm. The girls are in therapy but doing well. Emma's on the honor roll, and Sophie just won her school's art contest. They don't ask about their mother anymore, or their grandparents. It's like that whole part of their life just evaporated. Harold Thompson had a stroke last month. Judith calls me sometimes, crying about how they'll never meet their future grandchildren, how they destroyed their family for a woman who didn't deserve it. "We thought we were doing the right thing," she sobs. "We thought children needed their mother. What children need," I told her, "is people who put them first. And none of you did that. There's a new family moving into the old Thompson house next week. Young couple expecting their first baby. They seem nice. He brought me cookies when they came to look at the place, and she complimented my roses. Hope they'll be happy there. Lord knows that house has seen enough misery. Sometimes I see Rebecca around town. She looks right through me now, like I'm invisible. But I see her. I see how she watches other families at the park with her son, probably wondering how different life could have been. I see her walking past the school sometimes, even though her boy goes to a different one across town, the only one the district would let him transfer to after some behavioral incidents at his first school. The sins of the parents, visiting upon the children. It's biblical, really. Last Sunday at church, the pastor spoke about forgiveness. Harold and Judith were there, as always, sitting in the back row like penitents. The sermon was about how we must forgive others as we hope to be forgiven. But some betrayals cut too deep, don't they? Some choices can't be undone. Marcus and his girls have moved on. They're building a new life without the people who were supposed to love them most, but chose selfishness instead. And Rebecca? She's living the life she chose, just not the way she thought it would turn out. Derek's living it up in Singapore with his new family, probably never giving a thought to the destruction he left behind. But that's the thing about choices, honey. We all have to live with them. Every single day, Rebecca wakes up in that dingy apartment, looks at her son, who's starting to ask questions about why he doesn't have a daddy like other kids, and has to live with the knowledge that she had it all and threw it away. She had a loving husband, 2 beautiful daughters, a lovely home, and a life most people dream of. And she destroyed it for a man who discarded her like yesterday's newspaper the moment something better came along. Now she spends her days scrubbing other people's toilets and her nights stocking shelves, all while trying to raise a son alone. The very thing she could have avoided if she'd just been grateful for what she had. They say karma's a witch, honey, but sometimes she's just giving people exactly what they deserve. And in Rebecca's case, well, she's living in the bed she made, and from what I can see, it's full of thorns. As for me, I'm still here, watering my petunias and watching the world go by. You'd be amazed what you can learn about human nature from a kitchen window and a well-placed garden bench. And if there's one thing this whole saga has taught me, it's that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's not even grass at all, just spray-painted weeds. But that's enough gossip from this old lady for one day. My stories might be long, but honey, the truth is always more interesting than fiction. And the Thompson family? Well, their story is a cautionary tale for the ages. Some mistakes you can come back from. Others? They follow you for the rest of your days. Like shadows you can never outrun. 2 years later, you know, honey, I thought that story was over, but life has a funny way of adding postscripts when you least expect them. Just last month, something happened that made me think about the Thompsons again. I was at the doctor's office, routine checkup, nothing serious, thank the Lord, when I saw a familiar face in the waiting room. It was Rebecca, but if I hadn't heard her name called by the nurse, I might not have recognized her. The years had not been kind. Her hair, once so perfectly styled, hung limp and completely gray. She couldn't be more than 38, but she looked 50. She was there with her boy, must be about 6 now, and the poor child was clearly sick. Horrible cough, fever from the looks of it. She was filling out paperwork, and I could see her hands shaking as she wrote. When the receptionist mentioned the copay, Rebecca's face just crumpled. I can switch to a payment plan, she asked in this tiny voice that broke my heart despite everything. The receptionist, bless her, was kind about it, but you could see the shame radiating off Rebecca in waves. Her son started crying then, saying his ear hurt, and she pulled him close, whispering promises that the doctor would make it better. That's when she saw me. Our eyes met across that waiting room, and for a moment, time stood still. Then she did something that surprised me. She came over and sat down next to me. "Mrs. Mel," she said quietly. I heard about Marcus. How is he?" Now, what she'd heard, I found out later, was that Marcus had gotten married again. A lovely woman named Grace, a pediatric nurse he'd met at the hospital during his recovery. They'd had a small wedding last summer, just family and close friends. The girls adore her, apparently. Sophie calls her mom now, and Emma was her maid of honor. He's well, I told Rebecca simply. Very well. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. The girls, thriving. Her son tugged at her sleeve then. Mommy, who's this lady? Just someone Mommy used to know, sweetie. The boy looked at me with eyes that were startlingly familiar. He had Derek's eyes, but the rest of him was all Rebecca. My daddy lives in Singapore, he announced, the way children do. He has a new family. He doesn't want me. Rebecca's face went scarlet. Jason, it's okay, Mommy. You said we don't need him. We have each other. Out of the mouths of babes, once again. Rebecca stood up quickly, pulling Jason with her. But before she left, she turned back to me. I know everyone thinks I'm getting what I deserve, she whispered. And maybe I am. But my son, he's innocent in all this. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. She was right, of course. That poor boy was paying for sins that weren't his. But what could I say? The choices we make don't just affect us. They ripple out like stones thrown in still water, touching lives we never meant to impact. After they left, I sat there thinking about the strange turns life takes. Then, because I'm nothing if not thorough in my neighborhood intelligence gathering, I did some checking around. Turns out, Rebecca's life had gotten even worse than I'd known. Derek had married that young thing in Singapore, a wealthy businessman's daughter. They have twins now, and from what I heard through the international grapevine, my cousin's daughter teaches English there. He tells people he has no other children. He's erased Jason completely, just like Rebecca once tried to erase Emma and Sophie. Rebecca's parents, the Mitchells? They died in a car accident in Florida last year. Drunk driver hit them head-on. They left everything to a cat shelter. Not a penny to Rebecca or their grandson. Even in death, they couldn't forgive her. But here's the part that really got to me. I found out from Agnes, who volunteers at the food bank, that Rebecca comes in every week. She's been going for over a year. Always polite, always grateful, never taking more than her allotted share. She volunteers there too when Jason's in school, helping other families in need. She's different, Agnes told me. Broken, but trying. She told me once that helping others is the only thing that makes her feel like maybe she can balance the scales somehow. Harold and Judith Thompson? Well, that's the saddest part of all. Harold died 6 months after a stroke. Never got to reconcile with Marcus. Judith lives in assisted living now. Early onset dementia, they say, brought on by stress and grief. She doesn't remember most days that her son won't speak to her. Maybe that's a mercy. I visit her sometimes. Christian duty and all that. She thinks I'm her sister half the time, tells me stories about her wonderful son Marcus and her beautiful granddaughters. She's living in a past where she didn't betray them all. Last week, she grabbed my hand and said, I had a bad dream that we let Rebecca see the girls behind Marcus's back. We would never do that, would we? We would never betray our son like that. No, dear, I lied. Never. What else could I say? Marcus and his family? They're living their best life, from what Thomas tells people. They moved to the coast last year. Marcus runs his own firm now. Grace has a garden that would make mine look shabby. Not that I'm jealous, and the girls are flourishing. Emma's headed to high school next year, honors program. Sophie's become quite the little pianist. They have a new baby too, a little boy they named Christopher. Sometimes Thomas shares pictures on that Facebook thing, and you can see it in every photo. This is what a happy family looks like. This is what choosing right looks like. No shadows in their eyes, no secrets, no lies. And Rebecca sees those pictures. Oh yes, I know she does. Because Danny Morrison, who works at the library, told me she comes in every week to use the computers. Always looks up Marcus first thing. Just sits there, staring at the life she threw away, tears rolling down her cheeks while her son does his homework beside her. It's heartbreaking, Danny said. She'll look at pictures of her daughters, teenagers now, and you can see her mouthing their names. Then she'll close everything down and help her boy with his math. The thing is, honey, I've lived long enough to know that some stories don't have happy endings. Some mistakes can't be fixed. Rebecca made her choice. Multiple choices, actually. She chose Derek over her daughters. She chose deceit over honesty. She chose herself over her family. And now she lives with those choices every single day. Her son Jason will grow up knowing his father abandoned him for a better family. He'll grow up watching his mother work herself to the bone trying to provide for him. He'll grow up knowing he has half-sisters somewhere who don't even know he exists. That's Rebecca's true punishment, watching her son suffer for her choices. But you know what struck me most about seeing her at that doctor's office? She looked exactly like what she'd become, a ghost. A ghost haunting the edges of a life she once lived, forever on the outside looking in. And ghosts, honey, they don't get second chances. They just fade away, bit by bit, until there's nothing left but the memory of what once was. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that old saying, be careful what you wish for. Rebecca wished for excitement, for passion, for Derek. She got all of that, and lost everything that actually mattered. Now if you'll excuse me, honey, I need to go water my petunias. They're blooming beautifully this year. Better than ever, actually. There's something to be said for things that stay rooted, that bloom where they're planted, that weather the storms and keep growing. Unlike some people I could mention. Now that's really the end.